Hey y'all, welcome back to Joey's Booked, and we are going to be doing a book unhaul. So in today's unhaul, we are going to be going through some books that we're going to be getting rid of, and we're just going to go ahead and get things started from there. While I really love to hold on to a lot of the books I read, unfortunately my living space, I just don't have enough shelf space. I can't get really tall bookshelves or anything like that. So a lot of the books that I do read, I end up unhauling unless they're really big favorites or ones that I think I'm likely to reread. So our first category of books that we're going to be unhauling are going to consist of just some books that I've already read. Some of them I like, some of them I didn't, but either way, we're just going to kind of get rid of them. So the first book on our list is going to be The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. This is a fun book. It was a quick little novella. That's about it. Next, we have Secret Santa by Andrew Schaefer. I read this back around Christmas. It was a quick Christmas horror. It was okay. It's just holiday themed. Nothing special. Nothing worth holding on to. Then we have Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. This was an okay collection of short stories. It was translated, I believe, from Korean. I am interested in reading her other collection that just recently came out, Your Utopia, but still, it was nothing fancy, nothing that here a few months later I can really remember, so we're going to go ahead and unhaul it. Our next book would be Dead Inside by Chandler Morrison. Sorry for the glare. It was probably my first step into extreme horror. Wasn't something I was super crazy about. It was kind of a satire on the genre as a whole. It was really gross. It was weird. Nothing super special, and definitely nothing I really feel like I need to keep in my collection. And the next one's kind of a classic, and that would be Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I hate to get rid of this because I do really love this kind of Barnes & Noble edition that I have, but it's just, I hated the book. This book was not good for me, did not like it. I believe I gave it 2 stars, and that was mostly just because it was a classic. I'm getting rid of it. I don't want to hold on to this. And then we have Galatea by Madeline Miller. Another quick little short story. It was a mythological retelling. Okay, nothing crazy. I enjoyed it. I haven't read anything else yet by this author, even though I have a few of her books, but I'm not going to hold on to it for it just to take up space. Then we have A House at the Bottom of the Lake. Always mess that title up, but this is by Josh Mallerman. This is probably one of the most disappointing reads that I read last year. I probably would have unhauled it by now, but I lent it out to a friend to borrow before I decided to get rid of it. A lot of people go crazy about this one. It just did not work for me. It was very bland and very simple. Wasn't the greatest thing. And then we have another horror novella. I found a circus tent in the woods behind my house by Ben Farthing. This is another one with one of those kind of glossy covers, so sorry for that. But this was short, quick, indie author. It was alright time, but nothing too fancy. Next we have The House on Mango Street by Sandra Casernos. I picked this up because it was something I could have read when I was in high school and never did. Decided to go back and review it, see what I missed out on. Another okay, worth the read, but that's about it. And then the next two, I kind of have 2 books together. I have both a book and another book. Both of these are by the author Matt Shaw. I bought these before I really knew there was some controversy going around the author. I believe I have 1 or 2 more of his. These are another kind of indie author horror, but after some allegations and things that were made with him that had come out online, probably not someone I'm going to be buying from again. These were all about the gimmick of neither of them really have a title, they have a name, anything like that, of identifying information on them. Read them in a sitting, nothing I'm going to hang on to. That's about it. Another book that was super disappointing for me was Out There Screaming, edited by Jordan Peele. I was really excited for this collection, especially having seen some of his movies in the past, but ultimately, 1, I didn't really think this was horror as it was advertised, and 2, I DNF'd probably half of the short stories in this as I was reading it, and I just couldn't really get into it, so it's gonna go from there. And the last one that we have in this category is going to be Tampa by Alyssa Nutting. I don't know if I'd say I enjoyed this reading, but it was a really interesting one. I thought the commentary on it was very interesting and the backstory as to why the author chose this, or chose this topic to talk about. But it's not necessarily something I would go back and reread, nor is it something that I would hold on to. The next two books that I'm going to be getting rid of, when I bought them, I don't think I realized they were part of a series. I'm not even really sure when I picked these up, but I've only got two. And the first one is going to be Lies of the Beholder by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third book of a series. Did not realize it until a friend borrowed it, started reading it, and they were like, why does this feel like it's so late in the book? I have since bought the entire Legion set that this is a part of, and we're going to go ahead and get rid of it because I don't need this extra copy. The only other book that I have that was kind of part of a series is The Great Glowing Coins of the Universe. And this was part of a Welcome to the Night Vale. When I first heard about these books, I thought they were interesting. I have one or two on my shelf. But this was more some scripted stuff, not really something I'm looking into. I think it came straight from the podcast, I'm not really sure. But nothing that I feel the need to hold on to enough to keep. Then we have two books that I actually read as buddy reads for part of Ashley's Little Library's 24-hour horror-a-thon. Both of these I think I gave somewhere around a 3-ish star. I enjoyed them for what they were, but nothing I wanted to hold on to. So the first one of those would be The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. Had some cool commentary, especially coming from a black author making commentary on H.P. Lovecraft. Nothing overly fancy. It was fun, not enough to keep. And then we also have The Vessel by Adam Neville. I have a couple more of his books that I'm looking forward to reading. This one was originally meant to be a screenplay, and I could tell, and I think I would have liked it a lot more in that format. Still had a good time, happy I read it, will be unhauling it. These next two books are books that I'm not 100% certain that I'm going to be unhauling. I keep kind of going back and forth on them. I enjoyed some of them a good bit, but they weren't like the best thing that I read, but I do still find myself thinking back to them. The first one of those would be The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And this is a very, very short little short story. It's only about 12 pages. I really enjoyed this one, but because of its size, I've thought about getting maybe another collection of hers that might have this in it because I want to read more from this author. So, might hold on to it until then, probably going to unhaul it though. And the other book that I have that not 100% sure I'm going to get rid of would be Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. I just recently read this. It was an okay story. I really liked some of the representation in it, and it was a huge chunker of a book to read. I mostly really just want to keep this for the cover. I am obsessed with the cover on this one, but with how much space this is going to take up on my limited shelf space, I'm not sure if it's going to be worth keeping, even though I've enjoyed things from this author before. The last of the books that I've read are actually books that I DNF'd within the last couple of months. These are books that I tried to read, but I couldn't really get into. So the first of those would be Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. I'm not a huge nonfiction person as it is, and I had started this years ago and got probably halfway through, and then put it down for one reason or another, and I figured it was finally time. I needed to either get back to it or I needed to go ahead and unhaul it. And when I started reading it, I realized I just wasn't into it anymore. I'd read the parts that I really wanted to read, and from there I just decided to DNF and get rid of it because it was just taking up space. The next DNF I have would be Blackouts by Justin Torres. This was a book I was really, really excited about. On the inside, there was some stuff with blackout poetry, if you can even see that. There was queer representation. It was such a neat idea. It was one of those books where it's just a conversation between two people. I could not get into the writing style on this. I wanted to love it, but as I read it, I realized I just didn't care, so I decided to put it down. It wasn't worth my time. And our last one that was a DNF would be Organ Meats by K. Ming Chang. This was one that I was really, really anticipating this year, so the fact that it was even a DNF is really upsetting to me. I just thought this sounded really weird, really crazy. It's kind of on that horror-esque speculative side. It was about, all I really even still know about it was about two women, or two girls, that wanted to become dogs of some kind, and it was supposed to get kind of weird, kind of crazy, kind of gory. I did not understand a thing I was reading. If you've ever read the book Jawbone by Monica O'Hetty, I believe is who it's by, it had a very similar weird writing style to that, and that was another DNF I had last year. I just couldn't get into it, so we're just unfortunately going to put it up. We also have about 2 manga that I'm going to be getting rid of. I don't read a very much manga at all. It's something I've only dipped into a couple of times, but it's never something that I've enjoyed enough that I felt like are worth keeping on my shelves, even if I had a fun time with them. So the first of those is going to be Dissolving Classroom by Junji Ito. Even though I haven't read much manga, I really love his artwork. This one was okay, it was fun. It was a nice palate cleanser, but nothing worth keeping. And then we also have Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Yet again, this is probably, of the few manga I've read, this is probably my favorite I've read. I can't say that it's anything that I would necessarily flip back to or reread or anything like that. I did really love the artwork in this though. There were some really neat graphic scenes. I would highly recommend this if you're someone that's even just maybe interested in manga, especially if you're into horror. Nothing that I really feel the need to hold on to. Next we have some books that I'm not even really 100% sure how I've gotten a hold of or how they've gotten into my collection. A few of them may have been gifts or something like that. They're things that I just happen to have and I don't really need and I don't plan on reading. So the first of those that we have is another nonfiction, and this is called Angelic Music by Corey Mead. This isn't something I'd ever heard of. I believe this one was a birthday gift. Because I'm into music, I think someone just thought that I would enjoy this, and I may have found something interesting in it had I tried to read it, but it's not really the type of thing I'd sit down to read for fun, so we're gonna let go of it. Then we have the Inventions, Researches, and Writings of Nikola Tesla. This is yet another nonfiction book that I don't really have interest in. I do love these editions that are nice and fancy. They're really beautiful. They've got the nice shiny edges. But Nikola Tesla is not something I want to read about. Nonfiction is not much of my thing. We're going to let this one go. And then we also have a big bind-up of like 5 Charles Dickens novels. This is another really big book that I don't know if I'm ever going to get to. I haven't read a whole lot of classics, and most of the ones I have are usually horror classics. This is taking up so much space. If I ever do want to go back and read a Charles Dickens novel, I'll probably just buy them individually, get a cheap copy used somewhere, because it's probably not something I'll keep anyways. Our last 2 piles of books are some books that I either had in a crate from when I was a kid, or things that have just traveled around with me for a while that I'm not sure if I got at a used store or something when I first really got into reading. So this first set are just things that I'm not really going to read much of. Alright, these last few sets are some books that either I picked up in some random areas or they've just traveled around with me for a long time. The first one is going to be a complete edition of Edgar Allan Poe stories. I already have the big Barnes & Noble bound-up edition of Edgar Allan Poe. While I really enjoy his stories, this is not something that I need to keep. Then we have the book Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. I believe this is a historical romance. I don't really read much in either of historical fiction or in the romance genre. I think I picked this up when I first got into reading because it was a name I recognized and it was probably $1 or $2 at a used store. Nothing I need, not gonna read it, we're gonna unhaul it. We also have another historical book, which is The World That We Knew by Alice Hoffman. It's just another one that I'm not really interested in the time this was written. I'm pretty sure I just saw Alice Hoffman's name and was like, that sounds familiar. And then realized later on that she's the same person that wrote things like Practical Magic, which I also have not read. So I probably just picked it up for the name. Don't plan on reading this anytime. I'm gonna get rid of it. Then we have In the Blood by Lisa Unger. This is one of the most god-awful covers I have ever seen on a book. I know it's a thriller. I think I've seen her name around here and there. That's all I know about this. I don't know when I got this. I don't know why I own this. We're getting rid of it. Another book I have absolutely no clue what is River Thieves by Michael Crummy. Don't know what it is. Have no clue. Don't really want to find out. We're going to get rid of it. And then we have a random college textbook. I'm not going to talk about this. It's a big floppy one for those of you that like the flop. Getting rid of this. Don't need it anymore. And then we have some random kids books and things that I have from when I was younger. I don't know what hardly any of these are about, so we're not going to go in detail. But we do have the book The Monsters of Moray Manor by Bruce Coville. We have the first book in a series called Spirit Animals. I'm not really sure what this is. I included this in this stack because I've carried this around with me since I was a kid. I've never read them. They're more classics. But I do have an old Reader's Digest bind up of Call in the Wild and White Fang. We have another big old Ripley's Believe It or Not book. I actually do remember this one pretty well. I used to read these all the time as a kid. I just thought they were so fascinating. Especially like some of the more horrific kind of things that were maybe in the books. Don't need it anymore. Not something I'm interested in. And our last thing is, I'm just going to show these as a big stack because I don't fully know what all of these are. But when I was a kid, my dad always used to give me a bunch of these old Choose Your Own Adventure books. So I have some of these I think were like Dungeons and Dragons. We've got one here on top that's like Batman. And I always thought they were kind of neat, but I've got a big stack of them. I'm not going to read them anytime soon. So we're going to go ahead and unhaul those as well. Alright, so those are all of the books that we are going to be getting rid of today. We are going to do a little bit of book shopping. I am here with my friend Tabitha, and we are going to be going into McKay's books. So we brought some books with us from our Unhaul that we're going to kind of trade in for money. A lot of time this is how I fund my books and things like of those things. So we're going to go in, we're going to kind of unhaul, see what we can find. McKay's is used books, so sometimes it just depends on what they have. It kind of depends on the season, that kind of thing, or what people have been bringing in. So sometimes you find a lot, sometimes you don't find a little. But hopefully we'll find some stuff, come back, and see what we can bring into our haul. We'll see you later. Alright, we are back from McKay's. Had about 3 boxes that we took in and got a good bit of credit back, and still have a little bit left over after our haul, but we found some pretty good deals as well. So the first thing that we picked up is going to be Growing Things by Paul Tremblay. Now, I know this is believe a short story collection. I have not read this one specifically. I have read about 2 things from Paul Tremblay before, both The Cabin at the End of the World and A Head Full of Ghosts, and I really love these. And I really love a lot of his stories that I have checked out, because both of those were either 4 or 5 stars books for me. As far as this collection, I'm not really sure what we're in store for. I've heard kind of mixed reviews on this one specifically, but if it's anything like any of Tremblay's other works, I'm sure it's going to still hit pretty hard. And then one of the few Stephen King books that I did not own already. I still have about 2 more that I need to add to have a full collection of his main works. And this one is The Green Mile. The Green Mile was originally released as a series of little novelettes, and then they eventually condensed it down to this. Eventually I would like to get those novelettes, but they are not ones that I have really had the chance to come across yet, and I know before too long in my reading of Stephen King in publication order we'll be getting to this one. About all I know is with The Green Mile is that I know it has something to do with a jail story of some kind. It's set in a penitentiary. Because I don't actually know a whole lot about this one, I'm going to choose not to read the synopsis off, because I kind of want to be surprised every time I go into a new King work, because sometimes it's really rare that I don't already have a good idea of what it's about. Alright, this next stack is going to really have a lot of horror-specific kind of books in it. Some of these are things that I've heard about for a while and have kind of had on my radar. We have a few that are a little new to me and I'm not 100% sure, but they sounded interesting, so we decided to pick them up. The first one out of this stack is going to be Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. All I know about this one is I know it's kind of a little bit of a werewolf story of some kind, something about a mother that is starting to turn into a werewolf, from what I understand. I know there's supposed to be some really good social commentary going into it. I know that Rachel Harrison is known for these really kind of nuanced kind of horrors. I haven't checked out anything by her yet, but I do have a copy of Cackle as well. So hopefully here soon this is something that I can kind of get into and see if this is an author that's going to work for me. The next story that we picked up is kind of an unhinged women story, so similar to Such Sharp Teeth, except this one is more focusing, instead of the mother to a baby, this one is focusing more of someone's mother-in-law, and that would be Mother Thing by Ansley Hogarth. Mother Thing focuses on Ralph and Abby as they move in with Ralph's mother, so Abby's mother-in-law, and they don't really seem to have such a great relationship, and then some other spooky things are supposed to kind of come out of it from there, involving the mother-in-law, and it just kind of takes on from there. I've seen really good reviews for this in some places. I've heard some mixed ones in others, so we'll just jump in eventually and see how this goes. Then we have the horror, what appears to be kind of a novella, Out of Body by Jeffrey Ford. I had never heard of this book before, apparently. This is a 2020 release from what I've seen. It just looked really short. It was a pretty cheap copy. It sounded interesting. And according to the back of this, it says, a small-town librarian witnesses a murder at his local deli, and what had been routine sleep paralysis begins to transform into something far more disturbing. The trauma of holding a dying girl in his arms drives him out of his own body. The town he knows so well is suddenly revealed to him from a whole new perspective. Secrets are everywhere, and demons fester behind closed doors. Worst of all, he discovers a serial killer has been preying on the area for more than a century, one capable of traveling with him through his dreams. As I said, I haven't heard very many reviews on this, but it sounds... there's going to be some kind of thriller kind of esque aspect to it with a serial killer. It sounds like it's going to be kind of speculative with some out-of-body experiences and things like that. And we're just going to have to read and see where this goes, and hopefully this turns out a good one as well. And then we have Mayfly by C.J. Lead. The only way that I know how this has really been described is it's borderline extreme horror, even though I've heard a lot of people say it doesn't quite go that far, even though there are some gruesome scenes. But I've heard it kind of described even as almost a little bit of a romance. I know this hit really hard over the past year or so, and basically in this, we are following a woman who is essentially playing this book's version of Elsa from Disney movies, and she just kind of goes unhinged and goes on some kind of rampage of some kind. So it's supposed to be fast, crazy, a little all over the place. Then we have Pearl by Josh Mallerman. Pearl, I think it originally had another name called On This Day, The Day of the Pig, and then it got re-released as Pearl, which is the name that I've heard of it more as. But all I know on this one is basically we're following a pig, and I believe that it has some kind of either telekinetic or telekinesis kind of powers, something like that, and I think it may be a killer of some kind. I have read one book before by Josh Mallerman, and that was The House at the Bottom of a Lake. I believe I gave that either 2 or 3 stars when I read that a couple of years ago. It was just kind of an okay story, but I could see a lot of potential in the author's writing. I believe that I have 1 or other 2 books by this author. I know I have Bird Box for sure, because I never watched the movie because I wanted to read it. And then I think I may have the collection Goblin. But this was such a strange concept, I really wanted to check it out, and I'm really curious to see exactly where he takes the story. And then our last set from our McKay's haul is kind of a mixed bag of genres because I grabbed a few things that weren't quite in the horror genre. So we have some things that might be on the magical realism fantasy side. We've got a cozy mystery, and we've got some things that are more thriller-esque. So out of the stack, we also have The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. This is the sequel in the Thursday Murder Club series. I have not read the first book out of this, but I did recently purchase it as I've been getting more into kind of the cozy mystery kind of genre. I recently read Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, and that was either a 4.5 or a 5-star for me. And I really, really enjoyed that, even though I thought it was something I wouldn't be into. And then I got obsessed with Taskmaster, and I saw where Richard Osman had competed on there as well, and that just made me really, really interested to check out his books, having heard a lot about them once I pieced together who he was on the show. And now that I've got 2 of these, I feel a little more comfortable, because sometimes when I start a series, I like to jump into the sequel right away if I have access to it. As far as thrillers go, I did pick up a copy of Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. I have heard a lot about this book recently on BookTube. I have seen a lot of people reviewing it and giving it pretty high-star reviews. Especially with my thrillers, I usually try to avoid the synopsis. From what I do understand is this has a lot to do with a home invasion. From what I do understand about this is it is some type of home invasion story featuring a mother and her children. They're hiding away, someone's broken in, and then they realize that they might actually know who it is that is breaking into their home. That's about all I know about this one, but having seen it get a lot of high praise lately, I'm really curious as I'm getting more and more into thrillers. On more of the fantasy type side, even though I believe this is more of a dark fantasy, kind of on the horror-esque side, we have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Now, this is a book that I've wanted to pick up for a long time. From what I understand, this is about someone kind of going home to their hometown after years. There are some allegories of grief that show up throughout the book. I have not read a whole lot from Neil Gaiman. I do believe I have a copy of American Gods on my shelf as well that I have not picked up yet. The only thing I think I have read is Coraline, which was one of my all-time favorite movies as a child as far as animated movies and things like that. I did pick up that book a few years ago, and I have really enjoyed it, so I've been wanting to get more into his writing. This one is a nice short book. It follows a lot of those grief type things that I like in a lot of the horror side of genres, and I'm kind of curious to see exactly how this one goes, having seen mixed reviews on it. And then the last one, which I believe falls within kind of the fantasy genre, is Saarland by Rivers Solomon. I've not read from this author yet either, but I have heard really, really amazing things about their work. From what I understand, Saarland, we are following a mother who has had twin children and is attempting to escape from some type of religious compound so that she can give them a better life. I have heard that this is kind of a gothic-esque type story, that it kind of builds and it gets a little weird and crazy out there. And that's really all I know on this one, but I'm really excited to finally pick up something by this author, and I'm really interested to see where this goes. So that is everything that we picked up from our McKay's book haul. Now, I've also just recently received my Book of the Month box. This is not a promotion, but I have been subscribed as a member of this book service for a little over a year now, and I've really enjoyed a lot of the picks and stuff that they come with. I don't always get my box, but normally, even if they don't have a monthly pick that I want, usually there's something maybe backlist that I can get cheaper that way than if I was to buy it new. So, the first book that I had that came in with my Book of the Month box would be their new Volume 0. Volume 0 is a new thing that they are trying at Book of the Month, where they are releasing a bunch of short stories in a collection through various authors. I don't really know much about the types of stories that are listed in here. If I take off this kind of transparent green cover, there's a list of authors on the back. Some of these authors include people such as Juliet Escora, Mary Jones, Lena Valencia, Paloma Gosh, Christine Vines, Jean Kwok, and Abby Genie. None of these are authors that I have necessarily heard from before, and I kind of have a hit or miss relationship with most short stories collections where usually I really like them, or even if it's an anthology like this, I usually don't really like any of the stories. It's very rare that I like a couple here and dislike the others. So I'm curious to check out some new authors this way, maybe find some people to look into, and kind of see what book of the month themselves have been coming up with this collection. Also with book of the month, I did pick up a backlist hit with Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I have not yet to read from S.A. Cosby, but I have heard so many good things about his work, and I really wanted to pick this one up because I believe that this is about two dads who have just gotten out of prison and they are wanting to get revenge for their sons who were in a relationship together. And there's something about kind of this thriller take about dads wanting to avenge their gay children that just sounds like such a different take and just a neat outlook on the bonds of both fatherhood and how people interact with their gay children that I'm curious to see. From what I've heard, S.A. Cosby tackles a lot of social issues and justice issues and things like that in his kind of thriller type books like this. So I am excited to finally get a chance to dive into his works as well. And my last pick from Book of the Month is actually from May, so this would have been one of last month's picks. But I decided to go ahead and pick it up anyways because I picked different books for my May box and I didn't want to grab all of the ones at once that I was interested in. And then this month there wasn't anything for June that was really grabbing my attention. So instead we picked up this fantasy called Five Broken Blades, and this is by Mai Corland. From what I know, this is a fantasy type book where there are about 5 killers of some kind, I'm assuming assassins or rogues of some type, that are on a journey to go kill a god king of some kind. I have not heard very many reviews out on this one yet. I haven't heard much of what it's about. I've been getting more and more into fantasy as a genre and wanting to dive into a little bit more high-esque kind of fantasy or even political type fantasy. So this will be another one for me to try out and see how it goes. Alright, so it's been a minute since I filmed that book haul, but I just got home from work. I had to go in for a little bit and came home and I had 2 packages at the door. So I figured I would go ahead and add these last couple of books in to this haul. So the first one is one of my most anticipated books of the year, and from an author that I've already mentioned in this haul before, but that is going to be Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. And I got this on a pre-order because Paul Tremblay has become one of my all-time favorite authors. And I also got this beautiful Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. It's got these great red sprayed edges, but on the inside it also has, if you can see it, it's got kind of different scribbles and some scripting and things like that on the book ends. Yeah, and it's just a very, very pretty edition, which I would have ordered this book anyways, but when I saw there's a special edition out and it wasn't much of a difference in price, I thought, why not? This is a take on the cursed film trope, and we're basically following a guy who, when he was younger, filmed this horror movie, and everyone that has been a part of it has died, and there's hardly any clips of it left around, and there's this whole mystery behind it. And we're just kind of following and seeing where it goes from there. I have not read the full synopsis, nor do I plan to, as this is something I want to go into partially blind. Normally, I'm not big on the whole idea of like the cursed film kind of trope, but because this is Paul Tremblay, I am still super excited to read it and cannot wait to get into this one. And then we have my first ever Aardvark box. I have not ordered from Aardvark Book Club before, but this just came in the mail and I am super excited about it, so I think I'm going to go ahead and open it up. This also has 2 more highly anticipated books for 2024 for me, so I cannot wait to get into this and finally have access to these. So it looks like we've got a couple little bookmarks. These aren't really kind of my color. They're kind of cute though, with the little aardvarks on top. They've sent in this cute little card. One side it has all of the monthly picks, and then on the back side it has this fun little June bingo board. And I thought this was kind of cute. It looks like it has things similar to just I've donated a book or I've supported a small bookish business. There's a free space and there's some other ideas on here, but this is definitely kind of cute and something fun that you don't normally get in something like Book of the Month. As for the books, the first book that I got with my Aardvark book box would be The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. I know this is supposed to be thriller and almost kind of science fiction-y, which I'm kind of hit or miss with science fiction. It's got to work in the right way. It's something I don't read a lot of, but I was kind of interested in just this general idea. So from what I understand, this is about kind of a city or a village, and it's just the villagers and a couple scientists, and there's this fog that has come down, and there's some kind of rules at play, because if you go into the fog at a certain time, or when it comes, I guess it kills you, or I don't know exactly what happens with this fog. And it's kind of one of those, how is this affecting this community? There's probably some kind of thriller-esque as people start dying because of this situation. And I'm not sure if it's just full-out apocalypse. I don't know if it's more like an experimental kind of thing, but I'm really excited to get into it. I've not read from this author before, but this was such a strange premise that I just really wanted to try it. And one of my last highly anticipated books for 2024, and the one that is the whole reason I got this box in the first place, because it was an early release, is going to be The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. There is something about this cover that the moment I saw it just grabbed my attention so fast. It's got that gory quality and that absurd quality to it that I just absolutely love in a book. What I know about this is very little, and I'm choosing to remain in that way, so I'm not going to read a full synopsis. I'm sure I'm going to be picking up very soon, so I can get more details. But I know it is a Asian story about something to do. I'm not sure if it's coming to age or if it's just like a descent into madness. I've seen some really good reviews on it. But I know there's a lot of talk about eyeball eating. I believe at the beginning there's a character and one of her families talk about the eye being the best part as they eat like the eyeball from a fish. So I know that comes in with a lot of that Asian cultural stuff. I'm not going to look into this too much because I want to just have a really exciting wild ride, because that's what I've heard about it. And I'm really, really hopeful this is going to be one of my top 5-star predictions for this year. So, sorry to butt in, I just really wanted to share those since I already had this haul filmed and I hadn't posted it yet. And now we're going to kind of scoot on back to where we were. So that is our whole book haul for today. This is everything that I've picked up at McKay's and some from Book of the Month. If these are books you might want to see my reviews on, or even books that you may be interested in, be sure to like down below and subscribe so you don't miss a video. You can also leave a comment down below. If you don't have anything else to add, you can add something like a book emoji, and I will hopefully see you in a video very soon. Bye!